Today I'll be demonstrating a Wakanda workflow utilizing local virtual machines to run server. There are some definite benefits that result from this workflow, and I'll touch base on those as I proceed through the demonstration. I'm using an older Windows 7 laptop I had kicking around. We first need to install 3 pieces of software and 1 library. You can see I have my browser window open to a Wakanda team member's GitHub page. Andrew Shawcare has done some great work making this workflow possible. The instructions are quite clear. You can read them right here on the page. A simple 3 steps and you're up and running. Further down, you'll also see instructions for implementing the same workflow using an Amazon EC2 instance. Those will be covered in a subsequent training module. We need to download the library from Andrew's repository, so I've done that and expanded the zip onto my desktop. In the next tab, I have opened the Vagrant website to their download section. I've downloaded and installed the appropriate installer for Windows. It's worth mentioning that this setup works equally as well on a Mac. Next, I've installed VirtualBox, which is a free virtual machine software package from Oracle. I'll load up the application. This interface will update with our Vagrant routines, so I'll keep it visible at times. Last but not least, we need Wakanda Studio. Currently, this is set up for Wakanda 4, but newer versions can be easily substituted going forward. I've only installed Studio for a specific reason. Wakanda Server will be running on the virtual machine, so I don't need Server on this computer. So let's start a new project. I'll open Wakanda Studio, and I'll create a new project on the desktop. I'll name it Workflow. On the index page, I'll put a simple text label so that we can test and see that the server is up and running and allowing us to see the web application. Once I save this file, I'll close Studio. On the desktop, inside the library folder downloaded from GitHub, I'll copy 3 items into my application directory. These files allow Vagrant to do its work. I'll open the Vagrant file in a text editor and update the solution path to the correct path. You can see the Vagrant directory on the virtual machine. Your local files from the application directory will be mirrored to this folder on the virtual machine. Effectively, you'll be able to work on local files and benefit from the consistent server environment. This is one of the main benefits of this setup. When you have a team working on a project, it's always helpful to have a common deployment environment. Working on the same environment will make deployment more predictable and eliminate quirky bugs that might be caused going across different operating systems. I'll save the file and go to the command line. In the command prompt, you can verify that Vagrant is installed properly by typing Vagrant-V. You can see the version I have installed. Now I'll navigate to the workflow directory and simply type Vagrant up. This will go through a series of steps to provision a virtual machine using VirtualBox, install Wakanda Server, mirror your solution, and start up the server. When you do your first run through, there will also be a needed download of the machine image. This happens one time and then it's cached. I'll fast forward the screencast and come back when the progress is completed. So the virtual machine and Wakanda Server are up and running. I'll go to my browser and access the server admin port of localhost 8080. You can see the server is running alongside the default solution. This is the browser interface you would use to start and stop the server. On port 8081 is our application. You can see the index page we created. Now that we have a server up and running, I'll show you some common workflow tasks. I'll load Studio and make a change to the index page. Once I've saved and reload that page in the browser, you can see that the changes I make to my local copy of the solution are also mirrored to the virtual machine server. To debug server-side code, we need to do two things. First, in the Run menu, connect to remote server. I'll put in the IP 127.0.0.1, which is localhost, and the port 8080, with an SSL port of 4433. Now that we're connected to the remote server in the virtual machine, we can create a new file on the server side and add a call to debugger. Finally, you want to ensure that your debugger is running. When we execute the file, the Chrome debugger is presented to help us debug our server-side code. The final part of this workflow is starting and stopping the solution from Studio. I'll click on Stop and refresh the server admin page in the browser. The solution is no longer running. Typically, the Vagrant up command is something you might run once per day if you're working on one solution. It allows you to quickly bring new developers up on the same server setup and have a perfectly consistent experience regardless of their development machine. Using this Vagrant up workflow also allows you to report issues and bugs to the Wakanda Quality Assurance team and give them an identical server environment, which will lead to more consistently reproducible bugs.